Yo, what is going on, guys? It's C-Brav. Welcome to another MLB The Show 20 video. In this one, we're going to be diving deeper into some hitting tips for y'all. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, and this video is going to be analyzing approach and how you should be changing your approach during the game, how you should set up an approach before the game, all that stuff. So it's a little more niche than the first part. If you missed part 1, it's on my channel and I'll put a link in the description below. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. Lots of MLB 20 content coming for y'all. So like I said, this one's going to be a little more specific. These specific tips I think are what helped set me apart as a content creator. So parts 2 and 3 should be juicier than part 1, I would say. So let's talk about approach. So a lot of people think being good at hitting on this game is just putting barrel on baseball consistently, and that is not true at all. Baseball is incredibly strategic, especially while hitting, and I think you can gain a lot of small advantages and make a lot of small improvements over a large sample size, over a large period of time, by kind of being consistent in your strategy and taking advantage of the little things. So as far as developing an approach ahead of time before you get into the game, the number one tip I have for y'all, especially if you're newer or you don't have the best eye at the plate, is what I call the 3-3-3 rule. So this is going to be, you're going to take 3 spots in your lineup, and those are the people that are allowed to swing first pitch. You're going to take 3 spots in your lineup, and those people are not allowed to swing until you have 1 strike in the count. And then the final 3 spots in your lineup are not allowed to swing until you have 2 strikes in the count. So this is good for a multitude of reasons, especially for new players. First off, you get to see way more pitches than you normally would. A lot of people are swinging early in the count, especially newer players. And by limiting yourself on 6 of your 9 players in your lineup, you are allowing yourself to see a lot more pitches. Also, it's more confusing for your opponent. As a pitcher, you are much more random at the plate this way. It's a lot harder for your opponent as a pitcher to pick up on your tendencies because you have these preset rules that he doesn't know about, determining when you're swinging and when you're not. So very tough to pitch to someone using this approach. I think it's really good. It helps so much. If you don't have any other approach you want to go into the game ahead of time with, I would highly suggest the 3-3-3 rule. Obviously, one of the guys that you can wait till 2 strikes with can be your pitcher spot. That's pretty obvious. Maybe some guys that you can swing first pitch with are high power guys, low vision, where if you get a ball right down the middle first pitch, you can take advantage of that. Think about it for yourself, but that's what I would suggest. 3-3-3 rule, really good. So moving on to tip number 2. Once again, these are pretty niche. Understanding release points with 2 strikes. So thinking about how your opponent's going to attack you when they are ahead in the count, when they have 2 strikes, and when they are trying to strike you out. So I used this analogy or this example last year, and I'm going to reuse it again. So imagine you're in an 0-2 count against Chris Sale, and think about what areas of the strike zone or what tunnels that he could come at you with that would be bad for you. So the answer is the lower third part of the strike zone. The reason is Chris Sale's out pitch is his slider. The way he's going to get you out with 2 strikes most of the time, most players are going to be trying to throw sliders in the dirt. And so if you see the pitch coming in at a tunnel of the lower third of the strike zone, sometimes it's actually better to take that pitch, even though it looks like it's coming in as a strike. If you can work on this over time and understand how your opponent is trying to attack you as a pitcher, you can end up making some crazy takes. So if the ball is coming in a tunnel of the lower third of the strike zone with 2 strikes against Chris Sale, it's probably a good take most of the time, because over time, in the long run, that pitch is going to be a slider in the dirt more often than it's going to be a fastball in the strike zone. Does that make sense? Another example would be like the up and in quadrant against a sinker baller with 2 strikes. So a very common out pitch for sinker ballers, especially against same-handedness, is a sinker off the plate inside. So if you can identify that a tunnel up and in with 2 strikes is a pitch that you may want to think about taking. That's going to help you out a lot, because sinkers are going to tunnel up and in and then break off the plate inside, and you can end up with some crazy looking takes, like I said, where people are kind of just shocked that you didn't swing, because most of the time in the long run they are going to be throwing a sinker inside rather than painting a four-seamer up and in on you. I hope that makes sense. That's probably the smallest tip out of this, so let's go ahead and move on. Tip number 3, evaluating the game state and having your approach be semi-fluid throughout the game. So this involves identifying what you can and cannot swing at given the game state, identifying when you should be aggressive, when you should be passive, what parts of the strike zone you should avoid in certain situations. This is all very specific, and you will get better at it through your understanding of baseball and through playing this game more and more. So a couple examples for you guys. Runner on first, 1 out. Let's say first and third, 1 out. You want to be avoiding the lower part of the strike zone, especially early in the count, because a double play means you're not going to get that run in from third base, whereas the middle or upper third part of the strike zone, you're going to have a much better chance getting that run in, getting at least one run that inning, because you can elevate the ball to the outfield. Swinging at pitches low early in the count with runners on first and third, 1 out is just not good. Similarly, if you have just a runner on third and 1 out, you pretty much want to be swinging at anything in the zone, if that makes sense. And this goes to passive versus aggressive. Runner on third, 1 out, you want to pretty much just be trying to put the ball in play whenever you can, assuming it's early in the game and they don't put their infield in. But in that situation, a ground ball is an RBI, a fly ball is probably an RBI, a hit is obviously an RBI, and so that's a classic scenario where you want to be hyper aggressive at the plate. So your passiveness, your aggression should be changing throughout the game based on what you're trying to accomplish. The pitches, the parts of the strike zone that you should be looking at swinging should change based on the situation. Another classic example of changing your level of aggression is, let's say you have your 8-hole hitter up and there is 1 out and a runner in scoring position. So let's say second base. So your 8-hole hitter's up, second base, 1 out. This is a situation where you need to be hyper aggressive and just swinging at anything in the zone pretty much, because if they get to the 9-hole, if they get to your pitcher spot with 2 outs, your odds of getting that run in go down drastically. And obviously I'm talking about early in the game, not a situation where you would pinch hit for that pitcher spot, but 8-hole hitter, runner on second, 1 out, should be swinging away, because it's probably your last chance that inning to get that runner in from second base. I hope that makes sense for you guys. Those are just a couple of examples. There are literally thousands of these niche examples, and what I'm trying to convey to y'all is to constantly be thinking about what you're trying to do at the plate, not just up there hacking. So tip number 4, play to your hitter's strengths. This kind of goes with fluid game state, but understand who you have at the plate and what you're trying to accomplish with that player at the plate. So if you have someone like Juan Pierre, hyper speed guy, not a lot of power, and there's nobody on base, you should be looking to take a lot of pitches. You might even decide you want to take till 2 strikes, because with guys with large amounts of speed, sometimes a walk is as good as a double or triple. There's really no reason for you to be swinging early in the count, because the odds of you putting one over the wall are pretty low compared to other players in the game. So that's just an example with someone with speed. Additionally, I mentioned this earlier, someone with power is maybe someone you might be looking to swing at first pitch more often, because if they do throw you a cookie to try to get ahead in the count, you can really punish them bad. So this is all stuff you have to decide for yourself. These are all things that you must develop over time, and I'm just trying to give you the framework for which you can use to develop your own approach. So understand who's at the plate, understand what you're trying to accomplish, understand what you can and cannot do. And that brings us to the final tip, tip number 5 for approach in MLB The Show 20. Consistently improve upon your weaknesses over a large sample size of games. So this requires you to do a lot of self-reflection and understand what you're doing poorly. So I'm a big fan of like self-deprecating humor, so I will self-deprecate myself. To give you guys an example of this, there was a stretch of time last year where I was probably hitting 100 in 0-1 counts, and it took me probably a week or two to realize, but this was a huge weakness in my game, and I realized that I was so scared of 0-2 counts that I was swinging away at literally anything in 0-1 counts just to not fall behind into an 0-2 count. And this is a huge weakness, especially online, because most people, once they're ahead in the count, will start throwing you balls, because they're not really scared, especially 0-1. They'd be perfectly fine throwing you 2 balls in a row and then coming back to attack you in a 2-1 count. So the fact that I was swinging first pitch pretty much all the time in 0-1 counts was a huge weakness, and it's something that I had to work at over a large number of games and fix, so to speak. So the point being, it's important for you guys to kind of self-reflect on your game, understand what you're doing poorly and what you're doing well. And this is not necessarily dependent on whether you're winning or losing. Like, you can win a game where you hit absolutely terrible, and you can lose a game where you hit amazing. It's more about your self-performance. Did you do well? And if you did not do well in certain areas, what can you do to improve upon them? So it sounds pretty simple on the surface, but becoming a better player at MLB The Show 20 is going to require you to make a lot of small improvements over a large period of time, and this is going to require you to self-reflect and work on your weaknesses. So I hope this video was helpful for y'all. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Be sure to stay tuned for part 3 of this hitting tips series, where I'm going to dive even deeper, and we're going to talk about strategy and mental state, bringing the right mindset to hitting on this game. So if you're new, please subscribe. If you enjoyed the video and you made it this far, you're the real one. Please drop a like. It helps me a lot in the YouTube algorithm. I love all you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.